Since the beginning of recorded history, mankind has documented sightings of the strange and ominous entities that are known as shadow people. Whether they actually exist and what they could be has been greatly debated for years. The simplest description of these frightening entities is that they are dark forms, darker than even shadows in the night. They generally take on a humanoid form, generally male, though the overall body shape can be wispy and ambiguous. Reported sightings include something dark darting from behind you from the corner of your eye, to fully fledged shadow apparitions standing ahead of you or even walking in your direction. While some believe these entities to be benevolent guardians, others believe them to be malevolent and aggressive. Today, we'll be looking at 5 chilling shadow people encounters. I apparently seem to attract spirits. Strangely, they seem to be stalking me, and other people see the things following me more often than I do myself. I've had a number of "I thought I saws" and "it could have been a dreams," and just really weird "this place isn't right" feelings like most people, and even people telling me of their "I thought I just saw something following you" and whatnot. But the one I am 100% sure of went thusly. At the end of the night, we were dropping this one friend off at his apartment building. It was an interesting place. Really, it was more like 4 towers surrounding a courtyard. Anyways, we ended up hanging out for a while, a couple of us sitting on the hood and others just standing around. So I decided that I was thirsty and was going to walk to the group of vending machines, which was a good 25 to 30 feet away, but still perfectly in the line of sight of everyone by the car. So I'm walking, and suddenly I get this extremely intense feeling of being watched. Being watched in the way lions stare at a zebra they intend to hunt. I had the distinct impression that I was the prey, and whatever was watching was just, well, evil. I froze mid-step and hesitated, suddenly very, very scared, my heart pounding, and I turned my head to look over my shoulder, and a bit to the side where there was a large decorative hedge. I didn't see anything, not a thing. No shadows for ghosties to hide in, nothing. So I tried to shake it off. I scold myself for being stupid, grab my soda, and then head back to the car. However, something was off. It was completely silent. 4 other people were just staring slack-jawed at me. I began to feel a little creeped out again. "What is it?" I say. After a moment, one guy clears his throat and says, there was something over by the hedge. Something, I don't know what it was, but as you turned and looked, exactly where it was, it fell back into the shadows." The others started nodding in agreement, babbling excitedly now. Someone else then chipped in. "It looked like a person, but wrong. Its skin was dark, too dark, darker than the shadows. It had horrible eyes, and it moved wrong." "What do you mean it fell back?" I asked. I hadn't seen any shadows at all for anything to hide in. They responded, "The way you see in stupid movies, like it just took one intentional step back to avoid being seen by you, and then it was just gone." Needless to say, I was immensely creeped out. They just kept using the word wrong to describe it. It moved sort of like a human, but wrong, which is exactly the way I had felt when this thing was looking at me. Like the word wrong was being written in big, blazing red letters inside of my head. Now, I wasn't asleep, I wasn't high, and I wasn't drunk. Crazy? Perhaps. But it happened. This is the first and only time I've ever seen a shadow person. It was years ago when I was still a teenager in high school. I was invited to a girl in my class's house for a slumber party / cookout. We had a bonfire, hot dogs, marshmallows, the whole 9 yards. It was super fun, and I've got some really enjoyable memories from it. Anyway, she lived in a trailer, And next to her trailer was a trailer that had been abandoned for what seemed to be a few years. It was overgrown by weeds and basically looked like it was falling apart. I was told that the woman who lived there had actually passed away in the trailer. I'm not sure if she was sick or if it was an accident or if the story was even true for that matter. Who knows? Teenage girls like to scare other teenage girls. You know how it goes. Oh yeah, such and such died in there, and now it's haunted. Anyways, I remembered that we decided we were going to poke around the place in the dark. Yeah. I don't know, maybe one person had a flashlight. Anyway, I didn't even have a chance to get near the place before I saw it. This is the hardest thing to explain, because how do you explain something that looks blacker than pitch black? Is there even a word for it? I remember it was in the shape of a person. It could have been male or female, I couldn't really tell. It was just a shadow, but it was coming straight toward us, and I just lost it. Of course, when I screamed, everyone else did, and it disappeared before it could get close. I still don't know what it was, or even what its intentions were, but I think I'd rather not find out. When I was in the 6th grade, as I recall, about 11 years old, I was invited to a barbecue at a local park by a fellow classmate. I live in Las Vegas, and the parks around here tend to consist of a playground, an adequate grass field for sports, and a walkway surrounding it. This particular park happened to be surrounded by a 6 to 7 foot brick wall all around, except in the front of the park, which led to the street, and a single doorway-wide entrance opposite of that in the back, which led to a neighboring apartment complex. After a day of playing, as most kids tend to do, it was time to go home. We were tasked with collecting all of my friends' younger brothers and sisters. There were 4 of us same-aged kids actively looking for about 7 or so younger children. The park wasn't too huge, and there was only one brick building, which served as the restrooms by the front. The kids weren't too hard to find. But this is where things take a turn toward the paranormal. Halfway through the park, we saw a dark figure of what appeared to be a small child. Thinking it was one of the siblings we were looking for, we naturally started to run toward it. At this point, the figure started making a dash toward the back of the park, so we gave chase and started yelling for the child to stop. As this dark, black-colored figure is reaching the end, the most screwed up, completely frightening thing I have ever seen in my life ensued next. The dark, childlike figure turns white, starts running on all 4s for like 10 feet, runs straight up a tree like a cat, and uses the elevation to jump over the 6.5 foot wall to the apartment complex. Obviously, this scared the piss out of us, so we ran in terror back to the front of the park. That figure was completely solid, and I have 3 eyewitnesses who can back my claim. The only question we have is, what the hell was that? Long story short, a while back, a friend and I decided it would be a fun idea to go to an abandoned insane asylum that none of us had been to, but knew friends who had. We were driving along this old highway and saw a clearing in the trees and roadblocks. We decided that this must be it. We'd reached this conclusion because of the 20 clearings we'd passed, this was the only one where the road was also blocked off. Sure enough, we knew we were on the right track as we passed 5 more roadblocks and then a massive guard gate, and to the left, there was a giant building. So, there's me, 2 normal kids, and a weird religious kid, and he decides it's too creepy and goes back to the car. We told him it was fine if he went, but we weren't going with, because we drove 45 minutes to get there and weren't going to leave only 3 minutes after arriving. So, we start walking to the back, and there's this paved road. It was about half a mile long, to the left of the buildings, and to the right, a field of weeds, about 6 to 8 feet tall. Well, the road curved around the field, so we're standing back there, and I hear the kid who went to the car calling my name, saying, "Come back here!" So, thinking there might be trouble, we started walking back. However, a moment later, something struck me as odd. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. He's over 1/4 of a mile away. We can't even hear the cars going by on the highway, so why can we hear him so clearly?" This definitely struck us as odd, but we were really curious, so we continued walking back, but a little slower. And then, sure enough, we saw him walking in front of the barricades. Now, by this point, it was about midnight, and we saw a black figure with a background of passing headlights and his body shape. We called out to him, but now he wouldn't answer. He ducked away behind the barricade, and when we got there, he was gone. By the time we got back to the car, the other kid was inside it, reading. When we asked him about it, he said he hadn't left the car since he got back in, and that he had never called for me. The scariest part is that the entire time we were loading back up into my car, I swear I could feel something's eyes on me. For our final story, I'll share one of my own personal encounters. I've shared the entirety of this story in a past video, but for the sake of this countdown, I will break down the relevant parts again here. A dear friend of mine had been tormented by some sort of entity for months. It finally reached a breaking point one late night when she was home alone and the entity began to harass her. Too scared to make it through the night alone, she called me and asked if she could stay the night at my place. Despite it being very, very late and a school night, I could hear the panic in her voice, so I agreed to drive over and get her. When I got there, she was sitting outside, barefoot and in thin pajamas, despite it being nearly freezing temperatures outside. She had exited the home while on the phone with me, apparently, and had refused to go back in alone. With me now by her side, she was willing to re-enter the home. Walking through the threshold of the home was like walking through a solid wall of evil, malignant energy that tied your stomach into knots. But my friend needed to pack her bag, so I pushed through and tried not to let my worry show. Trying to make her feel better, I walked the entirety of the downstairs portion of the home and physically turned on every single light switch I could find. We then headed back to the front of the house to go upstairs to her room. While walking ahead of my friend, I first saw it. There, at the top of the stair landing, was a pitch-black figure leaning over the railing, staring right at me. It had no eyes, but I could feel its stare. It quickly backed away, slinking into her parents' bedroom, softly closing the door behind it. Fortunately, my friend didn't see this, so she was willing to follow me up the stairs to pack her bag. I made sure to close the door to her bedroom, turned on all the extra lighting, and helped her pack as quickly as possible. After gathering everything, I led the way back into the hall. This is where things really started to go south. The door to her parents' room was open again. Once again, I tried to mask my fear, but it only grew as we reached the stairs to return to the ground floor. Despite me physically turning every single light on down there, every last one of them was off, and it was pitch black. Having had quite enough of these games, I grabbed the heavy old Bible off the side table and began my charge through the downstairs floor. I wasn't really thinking. I didn't know what I'd do if I confronted it, but I was just overtaken by an almost blackout fury, and I was prepared to defend my friend. My eye caught a dark form slinking back into the den at the back of the house, and I followed. When I reached the doorway, I froze. Standing in the room ahead of me was a blacker-than-black man-shaped mass. Its arms were a little too long for its body, and it nearly reached the ceiling. Without thinking or hesitating, I shouted for it to be gone in the name of Jehovah and hurled the heavy old Bible at it. There was a loud crash as the Bible hit the back wall of the room, and the figure was gone. I returned to the front of the house and told my friend that we were leaving. With her bags in hand, we headed to my car and began to take off. It was as we were leaving that once again my friend began to panic. There, in the second-story window of her parents' bedroom, was the same shadowy mass, watching us as we departed. Well, that's all we have time for today. Have you ever encountered a shadow person before? Was it perhaps friendly, or was its presence dangerous and malignant? Feel free to share in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. There's new uploads every Monday and Friday to satisfy your appetite for horror. Until next time, stay creepy.